Hello and welcome to a discussion on the topic core values of Hinduism. Let me first give a brief introduction to what Hinduism is. You see, Hinduism is a collective term applied to many philosophical and religious traditions native to India. It contains certain core values and beliefs of which are prevalent among its followers, who are known as Hindus, and they are, of course, abide by them. Out of many such beliefs, three are the most important ones. First is Punarjanam or reincarnation. Second is Karma or Kama, as it is said in Pali, and lastly is Dharma. These three beliefs are related to each other in a chain of reasoning, and all of them are very important to the Hindu life. They have been spread among people all over by wandering Brahmins, ascetics and devotional singers through popular media of Katha, Bhajan and Varta. So, you might as well not be surprised if you find even the illiterate residents in remote villages being aware of the values and beliefs of Hindu life. Let me first talk about Punarjanma. You see, Punarjanma or Avagamana is a religious or philosophical concept that the soul or spirit after biological death can begin a new life in a new body. This doctrine is a central tenet in Hinduism. The Hindu belief system holds that the present life has no meaning unless and until it has a link in a chain of births from the past into the future. In fact, if you study the Rig Veda, which is the oldest Indo-Aryan text, we will find that numerous references have been made to transmigration, rebirth and re-death in the Brahmins. You see, it has often been asserted by learned Brahmins that the existence of a person in the world is a transitional stage where a person is moving from past experience towards future worldly life. Thus, life is nothing but an ongoing process, and it does not start with the birth of a new life and ends with the death of a person. Rather, birth and death are mere concepts in one's life. In this context, it is believed from a reading of the Bhagavad Gita that even Lord Krishna had remarked that the soul leaves out the worn bodies and takes a new form, just as a man discards his tattered clothes and wears new ones. So, see, this continuous process of life even after death and the belief in the creation and destruction forms the basis of Hinduism. According to Hindu beliefs, a soul reincarnates again and again on earth until it becomes perfect. This immortality of the soul is an important tenet of the theory of transmigration, and this theory emphasizes on the continuity of the soul. The soul is the jiva, and it's being considered as a part of God who is called Paramatma. It is immortal and eternal, and it cannot experience any pain or pleasure or be cut by any sharp-edged weapon. Neither can it be burnt by fire or drenched by water. In many of the writings, we can find that the body has been compared to a prison, while the soul has been referred to as the prisoner for the sins of the physical self. At the time of death, the physical body and the gross mind return to the elements of the earth, but part of the subtle body escapes and thus survives and accompanies the soul to the next work. Now let me come to some interesting facts centering around this context. Firstly, I will speak of the Potlod instance. In the mid 1950s, the villages of Potlod, which is situated near Indore in Madhya Pradesh, were not cognizant of the moment when the soul enters the body or when exactly it leaves the body. Now note, although this entire process is an invisible one, according to Pannalal Dorji, the jiva enters the body while it is still growing, and in turn it makes the fetus grow. Nothing would grow without the jiva, and after it leaves the dead body, the jiva flies away, leaving behind the plant or the animal or the human being's body, and then enters some other physical body. In this way, the whole process occurs and the cycle of births and deaths goes on endlessly. Secondly, I will speak of Kalabai. Kalabai was an old Rajput woman who had made certain additions about jiva. She believed that since the jiva is the instrument for animation, thus as soon as it leaves the body, the dead body disintegrates into 5 elements, namely earth, water, fire, heaven and wind. But the death of the body does not hamper the jiva in any way, as death to it is like discarding old clothes and wearing new ones. In short, it is believed that each and every individual has to undergo a series of reincarnations. Finally, in this section, the last instance I will be speaking of is that of Ambalal Luhar. Ambalal Luhar was of the blacksmith caste, who opined that according to the holy Puranas, it is not always the case that the jiva is born in a human body. He believed that each jiva has to pass through 84 lakh different births and deaths, and it is said that out of the 8,400,000 lives that the jiva lives, most of them are in the form of insects. This cycle of births and deaths continues unless the soul is exhausted and the jiva attains punna and merges with the supreme soul, that is the Paramatma. However, this merging of the Atma and the Paramatma is a rare event because it is believed to happen once in a millennium only. I now move on to karma. Well, karma is a Sanskrit word which means to do or action. In religious terms, it refers to intentional moral actions that affect one's fortunes in this life as well as in the next. It is only from the laws of karma that we can understand why some are born as insects and others as human beings or other creatures. Also, it is only karma that can give us the cause as to why some people are happy, successful and occupy high status in society and others are deprived or less fortune in the case. Karma is actually based in the idea that every action has its reaction and that the type of action and reaction are causally connected. So, a good deed is always rewarded and a bad deed is inevitably punished. The main idea behind is that a man's body, wealth, status, capacities, temperament, birth and experiences taken together acts as a compensation for his previous deeds, be it good or bad. It is inevitable that each and every act in present life has its repercussions in the following life. The redemption will work itself out in a man's passive experience as well as in his other actions. Subsequently, new karmas will be formed from new actions, which will again result in making amendments in another life. In this way, you may note the cycle of karma and reincarnation continues almost endlessly. There is also the concept of bad karma, that which is accumulated as a result of wrong actions. Bad karma is believed to bind a person's soul or atma to the cycle of rebirth, and this leads to misfortune in this life and the life after. A number of questions arise in the human mind about karma. Say, whether the destiny of a soul or atma is predetermined in all aspects, or whether an individual has some power to take part in the forces of natural law that determine one's destiny. Of course, there are a multiple of views in this context. Some believe that an individual can do nothing about the destiny of karma, as they are unable to take part in the working of the forces of natural law. According to them, karma is a cruel, divine law that no one can change. Every action in this present life is a result of the behavior in the past life, and so it is not possible for a person to act in the way he wants to. Many say that there have been cases where a person has done good karma all through his life, but he still finds himself in miserable condition, while the one who have never done any good karma seem to be successful and happy. But you must note here that this particular view is commonly held by poor and illiterate people. Coming to an interesting point among the Hindus, see, people believe that in the court of Yama, who is the lord of death, there is a clerk named Chitragupta who records every action performed by every individual in his book. It is believed that nothing can be hidden from him, as he can read individuals' mind and thoughts. Whenever a person does good karma, he is credited with a merit entry, and as for the bad karma, he is credited with a demerit entry. After the death of the person, he is taken to the court of Yama, and Chitragupta reads out the record of his thoughts and actions. After balancing out his account, if it is found that his good karma exceeds his bad karma, then he is sent to heaven, and he is to reborn in a better form of worldly life. But if the bad karma exceeds good karma, then he is sent to hell and is reborn in a baser form of life. In the previous section, I spoke about the jiva. You see, jiva is influenced by a person's conduct, behavior and deeds. To put in simpler words, a person with good deed will become good, and he who does bad deed will become bad. And thus it is said that a person is full of desires, and his desire is related to his will. That will eventually be connected to his deed, and as a result to his evolution. The third and the most complex concept of Hinduism is dharma. You see, dharma is the path of righteousness and living one's life according to the codes of conduct as described by the Hindu scriptures. It is the natural universal law which should be observed by every human being in order to be happy and contented and be saved from degradation and suffering. It is only dharma that can lead a human being through a good path to attain spiritual merit. Talking about the origins of dharma, there are various sources. Of course, there is the sacred literature of the Hindus. Hindu sacred literature is mainly written in Sanskrit language, and it consists of the Vedas, Upanishads, Samhita, Brahmana, Ramayana and Mahabharata, the Puranas, the Nitis and the Dharmashastras. It is ideally preferred that Brahmins should read, understand and interpret these religious scriptures to other castes of the society. The Purusha Shakta in the hymns of Rig Veda contains the theory of the divine creation of the four Varnas, where it is clearly stated that the main functions of the Brahmins are to teach, read and write and offer and officiate at sacrifices. Thus the Brahmins led a life of study, meditation and delved into the mysteries of God and Dharma. But in the present day, the Brahmins do not have the urge to pursue the understanding of the higher philosophy of Dharma. It has been found that among the people of the village of Potlod, myths and legends are considered to be an important source of Dharma. An example can be given of the myth of Savitri Satyavan, which describes the story of a just woman who revived her dead husband from the god and acquired three boons from him, the first being long life and prosperity of her husband, the second was a son and a heir for her father, and the third for the lost throne of her father-in-law. There are also many myths and legends surrounding Lord Rama in his conquest over the Rakshasa king Ravana. Hanuman was also associated with numerous legends for his service towards Rama. Hanuman worship is very popular among villagers of all castes, and so is the worship of Ganapati or Ganesha that also involves myths and legends. All these stories, legends and myths have a moral in them, and the moral is being emphasized when the myth is being told in a particular ritual occasion. Many songs are also associated with these myths known as bhajans, which are sung at the time of the performance of the rites. Ramacharitmanas is also an important sacred book popularly read in the villages. It is actually a modified version of the Ramayana that was written by a 17th century poet Tulsidas in Hindi language. The book is divided into 7 divisions and has depicted Rama as an ideal man in every sphere of life. He has been referred to as an incarnation of God Vishnu and has been regarded as a man of rights for his righteous conduct and behavior, who did everything in order to live according to Dharma. Yet another popular sacred text that is widely read is the Bhagavad Gita or Gita. The Gita is written in Sanskrit language and is divided into 18 chapters. It contains the message given by Lord Krishna to Lord Arjun just before the great battle of Bharata, and also the ways suggested by Lord Krishna for the emancipation of the human soul from the cycle of rebirth and karma. It is regarded as the doctrine of karma, dharma and rebirth. You see, many believed that the nature of dharma is very complex, and it tends to be so for the uneducated and illiterate people. But of course, it cannot be denied that the principles of dharma are very enriching and deep, and that tradition can be said to be an important and best sources of dharma. And since traditions vary from region to region and from one caste to another, naturally people draw from and imbibe the tradition of their respective castes. The principles of dharma have three broad categories. You see, certain codes of moral conduct are universally applicable in India. Showing respect to elder people is one such, which is also seen in the way we greet them. For example, when a person meets an older man, he bends the upper part of his body and touches the feet with his hands, and to show respect by this gesture. Women, on the other hand, are supposed to show respect to their elders by covering their faces by veil. In ceremonies which she is expected to salute her elders by touching their feet with both hands and then placing her hand on her forehead. Younger men are supposed to greet and salute the elders first, and they also have to observe certain rules and regulations in their speech and behavior towards them, like they are not supposed to laugh out loudly or express their opinions unless asked for. Also, they should never address an elderly man by his name, but by kinship terms such as ba or sir or ma or mother and so on. Apart from showing respect towards the elderly, a person should also be kinder towards its younger ones and friendly towards equals. He should be obedient enough and decent in his behavior. He should help a person in distress, and thus can he earn respect from everyone in the society. He should respect and believe in gods and visit temples, observe rituals and fast properly. All these moral principles are the first category of rules of dharma, and these should be followed in order to lead a normal and healthy life. In this way, he can attain punya for his soul and can gain merit entry, which will help him in his next lives. The second category of the principles of dharma includes all the rules of behavior and rights which leads to the acquisition of extra merit for the person who abide by them. These include giving alms to Brahmins, mendicants, temples, to the needy, wells and tanks, special devotion to gods, Brahmins and cows. Of course, those who want to earn extra punya can follow several traditional paths, like they can read scriptures to gain an insight of the divine knowledge, or carry out meditation and self-concentration, or may perform special worships and sacrifices, or may bathe in the waters of the 7 sacred rivers to wash off their pap and gain punya. All these acts are considered to be pious, and one who follows this is considered to be a righteous man and is respected by all. The third category of the principles of dharma includes the rules that are regarded as the most important ones. These include the rules which are prohibited and are asked not to do. The prohibitions are based on the ideas of purity and pollution, which are believed to have a ritual sanction, deeply rooted in mystical beliefs, and are thus termed as ritual rules rather than moral rules. The everyday life of a person revolves around these ritual prohibitions. If they are violated, it may lead to pollution of the person involved. Moreover, if a person commits a prohibitory ritual act, then not only he becomes polluted, but he is also said to pollute and be a potential threat to the entire community. Thus, those who indulge in committing ritually prohibited acts are considered as impure, resulting in the loss of his group status and expulsion from his caste. However, the expelled member can be readmitted in his caste by certain religious and social traditions. This too involves three acts: the admission of his guilt by the expelled person, his penalization by the caste members, and his readmission by symbolic act of co-dining. The main function of the penance is to restore the person to his group and to his normal ritual status, and in this sense it is a purificatory ritual. I will now categorize the principles of dharma under 5 groups. First is Sarva Sadharan Dharma, or rules of dharma which are applicable and observed by all the Hindus in the community. Second is Jati Dharma, or rules of dharma which are applicable and observed by a particular jati. Third is Kula Dharma, or rules of dharma which are common to and are observed by a kula. Fourth is Vishesh Dharma, or special rules, and fifth is Apod Dharma, or rules of dharma which are meant to be observed in times of distress. You see, every Hindu is a member of his village community, and the community itself is a part of the regional community. A person's religious behavior is conditioned by the Sarva Sadharan Dharma, which involves the worshipping of gods, observing certain rituals and festivals, and conforming to certain rules which are common to all the Hindus. Next, the Jati Dharma is considered to be the most important set of rules. A man is born into a particular caste which is considered to be an ascribed status, as he has no hold in which caste he will be born into. He will be respected by all if he obeys every rule of his caste minutely, and in this way he can escape the penalties of not carefully obeying the rules of the dharma. Being expelled from his caste is considered to be dishonor for the person, and it means that he has not observed the rules of Jati Dharma that were prescribed to him by destiny. Rejection or non-observance of the rules and norms of one's own caste results in a demerit entry in afterlife, and in the present life it gives rise to a state of ritual pollution, where he can only be purified by means of purificatory observance. Moreover, each patrilineage also has its own rituals which are connected with changes in the form and membership of the household and lineages. Ideal interaction patterns between different relations in the family and lineage are invested with mystical and moral force in order to maintain the unity and bonding among the family members. However, there are certain special rules as well which are meant for certain persons and age groups like children or the disabled, who are not expected to perform and follow all the rituals as prescribed by dharma. The king, local chief also fall under such special group, as they are not bound by such rules of conduct. For such special persons, there exists a separate set of rules prescribed by tradition and religion. You see, all these rules of dharma are suspended when a person goes out of cultural context. For example, when a villager goes to city or travels over long distance, he might not be able to follow all the rules as he does when he is at the village. In fact, many such cases can be found where a person acts in a totally opposite way in such circumstances. In Hindu scriptures, it is laid down that a person may overlook or ignore a particular rule of dharma if he is in distress. There have been instances where famous sages were forced to have impure food in order to save their lives. In a similar way, rules of dharma also do not apply for sannyasis or those who have renounced the worldly affairs. They are meant only for those who live in a conventional setting in regular life. A person's actions outside his conventional setting are not considered to be his social action, and thus he is not judged on the basis of his action in that setting. In conclusion, it can be said that if we consider socially, dharma is composed of all the moral rules and ethical codes, beliefs, concepts and theories that holds a society together. It is with the help of the dharma that the social group maintains itself as an integrated group. Only a righteous action can serve this purpose solely. And thus, dharma is a way of living and behaving in society. It is a scheme of values which the Hindus believe to be the law of the universe. Most of the Hindus believe that if the principles of dharma are not properly abided by, or the rites and rituals not performed correctly, it will lead to chaos and disorder in the society, and eventually society will come to an end and wither away. With this, we come to an end of the discussion of the module entitled Core Values of Hinduism. We will meet again in some other discussion on some other topic. Thank you.